So the very first thing that I had to do was to source some data for my fake personalities. And my goal here was to make this experiment as bulletproof as possible. So I didn't even come up with the names myself, but instead I used a name generator and then just picked generic names from there. When I then named my future applicants Isabella Hartley and Matteo Kramer, I set up email accounts for them and also wrote down some information that I wanted to use for both of them, like where were they based, what's their telephone number, and all the stuff that I might have to input when I want to apply later on. When I was done with the, fake invention of those two fake people, I started looking for job descriptions on LinkedIn that would fit a mid-level full-stack developer, which was the role that I wanted to apply to. And that whole process was actually a lot more difficult than I anticipated, so it took a lot more time. And at that time, I was very excited to just start with the coding bit. So, use coding to actually generate CVs, which I've never done before, which meant that I sort of stopped short there a bit too early when looking for job descriptions and skills, which was actually something that would come back later on to bite me. So I jumped right into trying to figure out how I could create PDFs from code. At first, I thought I would use Python to do that, just because it's the most versatile language that I know, or that I can code in rather. I think someone once said that Python is the second best language for any task, so I thought it might do in this case as well. However, after playing around with a few different libraries for a while, I realized that in my case, I should probably pick another tool for this job. I mean, it's definitely possible as well to do this in Python. I just probably didn't understand the libraries enough, right? In this experiment, I wasn't really interested in trying to become a master at working with Python and turning things into PDFs and stuff, right? I just wanted to have something that would work, which means that very often I probably didn't read the documentation or the instructions thoroughly enough, and then just moved on trying to do something else, right? You're going to see this a lot in these kind of projects, right? Where I want to get something done, I don't necessarily want to understand exactly how it works. So what happened here was that I drew up some pretty bad looking PDFs in Python, and I couldn't really figure out how to lay out things on the PDF. So very often I would draw across another string and so on and so forth, which is why I then decided to just switch tools here. And like I said, it's definitely possible to do this in pure Python, but I realized that I could just create a website and turn that into a PDF, right? Which is a lot easier for me, considering that I'm usually building websites for a living. So I created the design using HTML and CSS, and then wanted to use that as a template. So that means that I could just use that design as a general blueprint of how the CV should look like, but then inject any kind of data that I wanted to into specific places on that design using JavaScript. When I was finished doing the design as a website, I realized that I also had to make sure that it would fit on a normal sheet of paper, because there's a lot of CV screeners that, might just discard CVs that are not fitting the normal proportions. So I had to turn what I had on the website into an actual PDF, and then also make sure that the layout was fitting to a normal CV. When the design was done, I decided to give it a test run and just inject the data into the created CV.
For now, I just want to have this thing where the CV that I built this morning gets populated with the data that I have here. So if I get that done, then we're already a huge step. That's already a huge step in the right direction. So let me just run this, and of course there's an error.
Yeah, so even though I seem quite disgruntled there, the error is not actually a big problem there. There were a few things I had to deal with. So the first thing here was just that I had some problems with the templating language or the templating library, not being able to really figure out how to work with a loop there. So that was just a syntax error that I quickly fixed. But the bigger problem was I had trouble with the styling when generating the CVs. So for some reason, the styles that I wrote, or the CSS that I wrote, wasn't really applied. So I decided to just put it directly into the HTML file. And lastly, I also had trouble with the icons of my CV, which took me a little bit longer to figure out, but it did eventually come to a solution.
Okay, so what I've basically done now is, what did I do? Well, I had a problem with basically the images not being read in. So I was Googling a little bit, and turns out that, you know, it can't really do that. So what I have to do now is I want to basically turn my PNG files into base 64 encoded strings. In other words, like string representations of the image. And that I've done in Node, and now I'm passing it as a variable into my HTML template. So now you see I have here these, this is not anymore linking to any files on my machine, but instead I'm just passing in the base 64 encoding. I haven't run this yet. Okay, we have an output. We have an output. What does it look like? Yeah, that is not it. And now if I run my code again, I don't want to have this logged anymore, obviously. I run my code again, and we're gonna look at the, oh, beautiful, beautiful. I mean, it still looks obviously quite shit, but the images are there. All right, so this is actually pretty huge. Like, I mean, for me at least, like, it's not super complicated. But the nice thing is it does exactly what I want. We're getting a PDF out of it. It looks, it doesn't look great at the moment because everything is way too big, because I initially designed this for a web page, and I guess the units don't really translate well. But I'll try to fix this in a second. But the great thing here is that everything gets rendered dynamically, meaning I can now create random CVs from this. I can put in the user data. I can now set it, first of all up that it works. That's the first thing that I'm going to do now.
So now that we're able to generate CVs programmatically, in the next video, we'll be taking a look at how we actually get all the jobs that we need to apply to. For that, we'll be scraping Indeed, so getting over 1,300 jobs, all with the possibility of using the quick apply feature. Now I also want to take the time here to just say that the video quality will get better. Not necessarily during this project, as I already took all the footage, but there's so many things that I realized I could have done better when it comes to sound, when it comes to the footage that I took, even when it just comes to forgetting about documenting certain steps of the process. So as I said before, I'm doing this for the first time, and I'm only saying this right now because at one point I was even thinking of whether maybe it would be better to not publish these sort of in the process or behind the scenes videos. But then I thought I put so much effort into, you know, documenting it along the way, and I did want to show, you know, generally how software projects sort of go. But again, that documentation process will definitely get better over the next few projects. So thank you for watching, and I hope I see you in the next one.